Dadaab refugee camp, Kenya. The doctors told Timiro Hassan that her daughter could survive. The kidney cancer could be treated. Even though the United Nations couldn't pay for it, even though the chemotherapy wasn't available here, there was one option that for decades had saved the lives of Somali refugees in need of medical care. 5-year-old Nemo Salin could be resettled in America. Level, emergency, UN. Officials wrote on her file. If she doesn't get resettled, she'll die, said one of her doctors, Aden Hassan Abdi, the clinical service coordinator with the Islamic Relief Aid Group. But Hassan ran into the same hurdle as hundreds of refugees with urgent medical conditions, the Trump administration's new security restrictions. There are now 11 countries facing a broad suspension from the U.S. refugee program. Even people with potentially deadly yet treatable illnesses are being blocked. Some refugees with severe medical conditions have already died while waiting for the admissions to resume, advocates say. The United States has been a global leader in resettling refugees since the aftermath of World War II, when it accepted more than 500,000 displaced Europeans. But the White House says the new pause is necessary to improve vetting procedures for people from high-risk countries such as Somalia, where an Islamist extremist group, Al-Shabaab, is battling the government. U.S. authorities say they will consider exceptions on a case-by-case basis. People who work at this camp of 250,000 refugees say, however, that they have seen none approved since late October. The U.S. always recognized that resettlement was a humanitarian program, that it saved people's lives. These changes have been devastating, said Sasha Chanoff, the founder of Refuge Point, a nonprofit group that refers urgent cases to the State Department for resettlement. How refugees are forced back to a war zone to repay their debts. Nemo was born in this sprawling refugee camp, but her parents fled Somalia in 1992, making her subject to the suspension, which was quietly announced by the State Department in October. Even though refugees were not included in the travel ban that the U.S. Supreme Court recently allowed to take effect, their cases have largely been frozen through at least January, and possibly longer. When she was 3, Nemo was diagnosed with Wilms tumor, a cancer of the kidney. A malignant growth bulged from her tiny belly. In her family's hut in this vast refugee camp, her mother poured cold water on her feverish body, not sure what else to do. Last year, Nemo was taken to Nairobi, where one of her kidneys was removed and she received a round of chemotherapy, enough to save her life at least temporarily. But more radiation therapy would be needed to eradicate the cancer and keep her alive. UN refugee officials consulted the National Council of Churches of Kenya, which sometimes funds medical treatment for people in the camp. Not ready to approve this due to cost, wrote a doctor with the council in an email to the United Nations in September. That made resettlement in America Nemo's only option.